we'll talk to Brandon, a theist in Texas. That's where we are. Brandon in Texas, you're on the line with Jimmy and Matt. How you doing, Brandon?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Delightful.
Awesome. So I just had a quick question. I need some advice because uh, I've been a Christian for about 7 years now, and so I was just calling into the show to see if you guys could give me some advice on a few things.
Okay, and it looks like you told our call screener that you are still or well, at least still a theist, right?
Yes, I would say I still embrace theism, but I'm in the middle of deconverting right now after watching a couple of your videos and having conversations with other people.
Okay. So what's the go ahead and ask your question, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. So um, I wanted to know, what do you think about cases where certain Christians maybe have approached you, or you've seen it happen before, where they go up to you and tell you, hey, God told me this about your life, and everything they're telling you is spot on.
That's
I've had
never
moments like
happened.
that happen to me, and if for some reason that's the only thing that's kind of keeping me attached to this belief, because it just doesn't make sense to me how they would know so much information about my life. I mean, they never met me. They never had a conversation with me before.
That's never happened to me.
Good.
Yeah, nor to me, but every time there are plenty of stories of people thinking that not just for Christianity, which you come from, but there are certain types of fortune tellers, which is realistically what we're talking about, or psychics or whatever, in every religion, as well as these sort of non-religious ones that they just claim to be psychic, but not necessarily attached to a specific religion. And every time there has actually been a mechanism to investigate that, not just somebody telling the story, I had a psychic told me about the candles in my pantry and how many were melted and which was one that someone had brought to me once upon a time. Anytime that you actually have the ability to investigate, they have fallen apart. And so if you want to know what my suspicions are about what happened, potentially we can share that, but I think I'd need to know more information about what you're saying happened.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What are people telling you they couldn't have known?
Yeah. So one thing that somebody had approached me about was when, as a kid, I was abused by my grandparents, physically abused, and somebody had approached me and told me like, hey, God told me that you were abused by your grandparents and you came from a lot of trauma growing up as a kid, and he wanted me to tell you that he loves you. And
Okay.
he sees the pain
Here's a question.
you went through.
Here's a question.
Yes.
Why would a God who sees that you are being abused by grandparents never do anything at all to intervene or try to correct it, and then instead of comforting you directly, sends someone else to say he knows what happened and he loves you?
Yeah, and that's the issue that I have right now, which is why I've been doubting my faith, is because I haven't heard from God directly. I've heard from other people, or I guess you could say messengers, but I've never heard from God
Brandon,
directly. He's never opened up the heavens or anything like that. So.
yeah, I have a different question for you, actually. So that man, do you know the person's name? Do we have a name for him?
I do know his name.
What was his name? Just first name.
His name's Jonathan Smith.
Well, you don't have to give all of that, but that also sounds like a fake name. But anyway, how many more people have you seen him do that to? How did you, after he gave you that, have you followed him around, made him a part of your life? How many more people has he gone up and given, these somewhat vague, frankly, predictions to that you've witnessed?
Well, he was my young adults pastor for about a good 6 years. And so I was under him for that time, the period of time. And I've seen him do it.
How far into those 6 years did he do this?
I would say probably, if I could put it into a number, I would say like 10 times to different people throughout the time.
No. Wait, how far into the 6 years of him being your pastor did he give you your prediction or your psychic reading or whatever you want to call it?
I would say the first month that he met me.
But it wasn't the first moment he met you, right?
Well, when he first met me, he did have a certain word for me, but the next, I would say, like couple of weeks after we had more conversations and connected with each other, he gave me some more information about my life.
So this
The first moment he met me, he did have some sort of like,
okay, give me
quote
the
unquote,
first moment
revelation.
then, because already your thing of he had no way of knowing has already fallen
Mhm.
apart to me, because this is exactly how Mormons do it. When you go and you
Mhm.
visit a Mormon church and you participate in the community, the bishop loves to gather information about you from the other people in the community, and then when it's you one-on-one, act like he has some spiritual revelations. I know because my dad
Mhm.
used to do that shit, and then I got to see it recognized in other happen in other places. So I'm already
Yeah.
the answer to how this could have happened, the how it could have. I'm not even saying that is how it happened, but there's
Yeah.
already a natural explanation that's a billion times more likely than the universe turned to magic so that he could reveal it to you. So what was the first, you said the first moment he met you, the first time he's exposed to you, presumably nobody's talked to him about you. He doesn't know anybody from the community, I hope.
Mhm.
But tell me about the first words he had for you that he knew about you when he meets you for the very first time.
Yeah. So he had approached me at church and he told me about my dad. I didn't have a father growing up, and he came up to me and told me that he saw that the Lord revealed to him that I didn't have a father figure, and that he was wanting to be his. He felt like God encouraged him to come up to me and try to connect with me as a father because he knew I didn't have a father at the time.
Yeah. So super.
Mhm.
Again, there are elements to this that indicate that you are both a part of a community before this happened. So there's one natural explanation. Somebody's
Mhm.
actually already told him he's sitting in some sort of meeting with other religious leaders. Hey, we're aware of this person. They have this stuff and this stuff and this stuff. As far as like, even if that isn't the answer, there are other natural answers. There are
Mhm.
cues and things about people that you can find out about a person's life, and this is what cold readers often use when they start to get into more warm reading and hot reading, where you can make those jumps and those assertions and most often be right as
Mhm.
you're interacting with somebody about whether or not they had a positive male role model or father figure or what like this. As far as things that my two answers to you are, one, my two options that I would say you should consider as much more likely is that, one, he is a cold reader who then got into warm reading, which if you don't know about that, I guess read up on it, watch Darren Brown's on stuff, but got into more warm reading. Or two, he's a liar. Like these are such simple to me. I don't understand this. I'm sorry. It's been a long time since I've deconstructed, but I don't understand these being the big barriers when somebody's deconstructing and going, "Holy crap! None of this stuff makes sense." And I'm observing my belief, and if my belief isn't true, I'm recognizing that religious people have clearly known that they were lying when they were making up at least elements of it. That I've been part of one of the biggest human scams there is. But I'm having a hard time letting go of that one of the people who participates in perpetuating that scam might have lied to me.
Mhm. Yeah. Eight. Okay.
If he walked up to
Well,
you and
thank you.
told you your social security number, I'd be more impressed. But I still want to think he was from heaven, or that God was talking to him.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he'd
That
be
was
one
the
of the best
impression.
street magicians I'd ever seen, for sure.
I'm
Mhm.
wondering,
For sure.
Brandon, how old were you when you first went to this church, and what drew you to this church?
Yeah, so I was 18 years old at the time. I just graduated from high school. And what drew me to the church was during this time, I was in a toxic relationship, and I had a little religious upbringing as a child. And during that time, I had prayed and asked God, like, hey, I need some help. I need your direction. And my aunt had invited me to church. And so I ended up going, and that's how I met the people there. But my aunt was also new to the community, so she didn't have any connections with people there.
So there's no way your aunt or anybody else who knew you could have told this youth pastor, "Hey, Brandon's going to be joining us at church this week. He's had a bit of a rough go on occasion." That's not possible.
It's a possibility, but I don't necessarily think it happened because my aunt was new
I
at the
do.
time. She was fairly new to the church. I think she was like a week in, and she wasn't really like connecting with other people
How
from the
big is your
congregation. At
town?
least from say that again.
Well, I people presume that if they go someplace, nobody can know anything about them, and yet they're still in their hometown. They're still in the area. There's people they went to high school with. There's people they went to junior high school with. There's people they run into at the grocery store. There's people they played softball with. There's people they played, you know, all of these interactions. And so here you've got someone who's potentially suffered abuse at the hands of elders and who, was missing a father. The notion that elements of your story could not possibly have made it to a pastor is unbelievably naive.
Yeah.
I have a number of friends who have been pastors at different churches, pastors and youth pastors. And you know what the church is really, really, really good at? Gossiping.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much to say, they don't look at it as gossiping. It's, hey, Brother Steve, I need to tell you, this family down the street from me has been having a really tough time, and we need to add them to our prayer circle. And here's what we need to pray about specifically, because there's a little boy in this house that's had to go through this, blah, 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 blah. And they don't look at it as gossiping, and they don't look at it as if they've shared anything, sensitive. And they'll feel like God has laid it upon their heart. God has given me this information. No. There's zero evidence that God's given you any information. And if God had a message for me, why did he need you? And why was it, in fact, a message about how bad things have happened to me and God still loves me? Why isn't it a message about why those bad things happen? Why God didn't stop it? Why would God allow children to be beaten and starved and all kinds of things like that? It's like the air quotes psychics who are, I'm getting somebody from the other side, and it's a gentleman, and he's maybe just slightly shorter than me when he stands next to me. I mean, that's not really a good measure, but he's saying, is this perhaps your grandfather on your mother's side? Did he have a beard? And he's saying he loves you and he's in a better place and everything is fine. It's never a message of, here's where I hid the money.
Yeah.
It's never a message of, what happened to you was entirely your fault. Those aren't the messages. They're always Barnum statements, which can apply to almost anybody, or other broad generalities of, oh, I bet you're having a tough time. That applies to everybody. Now, I wasn't abused by my grandparents. And I have a father. My dad's still alive. So those sorts of generalizations might not work to me. But if somebody had started with that and said, yeah, I see you're having a really bad time. God told me that you dealt with some abuse. And then you watch the person's face to see how they react.
Right.
And that allows you to then change your next couple of sentences to turn that statement into something that is more specific to them. Because it's like saying, oh, you come from a family of 4, don't you? And what does a family of 4 mean? Does that mean mom and dad, 2 kids? Does it mean a mom and 3 kids? Does it mean parents with 4 kids? Because a family of 4 could just be talking about the kids. Could it be there's so many different ways to make that fit. And people are like, oh, he knew things about me he couldn't have known. No, there's no demonstration that he knew anything. And the more accurate they are, the more likely it is that they have hidden information. They've gotten information from somebody else. Now, like Jimmy, I can't say that's what happened. But if we're running around saying, ooh, I'm going to stay with the church because somebody associated with the church seemed to have information that I can't currently explain, congratulations, you should go join every church, every cult, and every group, and you'll be paying every TV psychic reader all of your money for the rest of your life, because they're all going to be able to do that.
Yeah, Brandon, Matt's quite right about the gossip and the stuff in the community. But as he was talking about it, I was also just thinking about what you said. You were 18 years old and you showed up to a church with your aunt. So now consider yourself, pretend you're a pastor. You're essentially a professional social engineer, a new person who is young, you know, in high school or freshly out of high school, has showed up to church, not with his direct family, not with his mother and father, but with his aunt. Here's a few things I know about him. One, he's having some sort of existential crisis, probably, where he's looking for answers. He's trying to answer these great big questions that are bugging him. And the people that he's doing it with aren't his actual parents. Why not? Like, literally, just as soon as you said 18 with my aunt, that this guy would guess that you, I don't know whether he directly said you didn't have a father or just said something about your relationship with your father, that then this is what our memories do, and this is what, when people are doing this type of social engineering, this is what happens to a person, that you've now filled in that the hits were a lot hotter, and the misses, you don't even remember the misses. But either way, it's literally like, yeah, if I was a psychic on a stage, hey, there's an 18-year-old boy here, not with a date, not with his parents, but with his aunt, you can guess, and 90% of the time, yeah, this person's not here with, maybe not at a magic show, but at church, doesn't have a close relationship with their parents.
You know, it makes sense.
Yep.
And, thank you for explaining that. And I just wanted to respond to Matt real quick. He said that that I still would go to church. I don't actually attend church anymore. I stopped going ever since I started to have these doubts. And this was like the only thing that I was still kind of holding on to at the time.
Oh, I wasn't. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say you were still going to church.
Okay. No, you're fine. It's okay. So, yeah, I guess I can just say thank you guys for being helpful. Definitely helps me open my eyes, and I want to get better. And just, I guess my next question would be, what advice would you have for someone like me?
Call recovering from religion.
Yeah.
Say that one more time.
Reach out to recoveringfromreligion.org. They have a hotline. They have counselors. They can direct you towards, more people with better training than we are on how to deal with those things, and put you in touch with people in similar situations, who, might be able to offer you some help and some, companionship and all that stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. You said recovering from religion, correct?
Yeah.
Yep. Recoveringfromreligion.org.
I know it sounds like we're wrapping up here, but Brandon, I'm pretty curious about what it sounds like. You've already kind of worked yourself off of Christianity, but you had, like you said, these sort of anchor events that are sort of tying you to it. Is there still beyond that a lingering belief in God? Is there a reason why, or are you currently trying to just deconstruct to wherever it goes, or are you in a position where I'm deconstructing from Christianity, but I'm still sure there's a God that exists?
That's a good question. Yeah, I can't say for certain that I know that a God does exist or that he doesn't exist.
Neither can we.
I don't really know how to explain where I am right now.
That's fine.
Yeah, I get it. All right, cool.
It's actually often much better than the people who think they can, because a good chunk of the people who think they can seem to get it wrong over and over again.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I watched a lot of your debates against different Christian speakers. It's just embarrassing. I just think to myself, man, I don't want to be a Christian. Matt is just destroying everybody.
Well, send us those Christians. Tell them to call in, man. The ones that think they know better for you. But Brandon, shit, I had a last question before you left and I lost it. Not a last question. You were asking for advice. Here's my last bit of advice. Brandon, you don't have to go through a deist phase. You don't have to do it. I promise it's fine if you don't.
What is a deist phase? I'm not too sure.
It's where you decide that an absolutely undetectable, unprovable God is likely. an unlikely, a God whose likeliness you
It's like-
couldn't give a value to is likely. That's
But-
what.
But what Jimmy's doing is kind of like saying, hey, Brandon, please remember, you don't have to go through a I'm spiritual but not religious phase either, which you might end up going through. I just don't understand what the hell spiritual means to anybody. But anyway, I appreciate the call, Brandon, and thanks for talking. Don't forget recoveringfromreligion.org. And they have online chat stuff and everything else. It's potentially great not only for just talking to somebody, who has been through this or knows somebody who's been through it, but also there are groups. There are actually meetup groups of people who are in the process of deconstructing or finding their way out of religion. If you feel that you would benefit from sitting down and talking to other people who are going through something similar. I'm not necessarily the best person to talk to because I find my way out of religion a long time ago and have been so engrossed and in the deep end of combating it that there are some things that people say when they're deconstructing which just doesn't make sense to me because it doesn't reflect my experience. Like I never had a serious fear of hell. And that's because I walked down the aisle at a revival at the age of 5 and accepted Jesus into my heart. And from that moment on, I was convinced that I was not going to hell. And so the only thing I was worried about was trying to let people who were going to go to hell know that there was a way for them to avoid it. Then when I deconstructed and found my way out of religion, the fear of hell went away and, because it doesn't exist. So I went from, the second I found out, basically, somebody convinced me that hell was real, I accepted whatever it was that kept me out of there. And then later, when I figured out that wasn't real, there was no baggage or trauma from it. And hopefully you don't suffer baggage from any of that as well. But I'd look into cold reading, just to see if you see some of the same trends there. Darren Brown, yes, has some videos up about it. Well, there's others, but I'm not going to keep going just because.
Yeah,
we got a nice theist on the line.
I just wanted to say, I think I could benefit from participating in those groups because part of the reason why I transitioned into going to church was because I had lacked that community growing up. I didn't have that family bond. And so being a part of that community at church helped me feel better about my life because I was able to communicate with people and have those connections. And so now that I've separated myself from that group, I am kind of in a weird position where I need more people around me. So I'm glad that you referenced that.
Brandon, everything you just said, pastors know that that's why 18-year-olds show up.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure
18-year-olds, especially 18-year-old men, don't just decide to go to church out of the blue. That just doesn't happen. And so the second you walk in a door, there are certain things that they can be reasonably confident apply to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't think they're doing it malicious. Well, I don't know if that's the word I want to use. I don't think they know that they're doing it necessarily. Like, I think it has become subconscious. I think a lot of these people, I think they know certain things they're doing are shitty. But, and especially, like I said, with my dad, where he's literally, finding out from other youth what sins the other ones. And he's using things that he learned in the military as an investigator in the military, basically how to interrogate and get people to rat out the other kids so that it draws attention off of them. Obviously, that sort of shit's malicious. But a lot of these people, like, he probably actually thinks that there's something special about him, that when an 18-year-old boy shows up with his aunt, he can tell he doesn't have a good relationship with his dad. Must have been Jesus that told me that. But that's entirely likely. Anyway, we've gone on and on. We won't. This is like the 5th wrap up. Thank you, Brandon, for calling. Yeah. This was a nice call.
Yeah, I have something to add after Brandon.
All right. See you, Brandon.
It was nice meeting you guys. Thank you so much for all the hard work you do.
Thanks.
Hello, I'm Jimmy Snow, Pokemon Master and Executive Producer on The Line. Would you like to support a specific show on The Line or The Line in general? There are special tiers on our Patreon and in our channel memberships. You can do just that. By the way, you could consider leaving a super thanks down below. You could also like, subscribe, and leave a regular comment. All of these are great. Now, I'm going to get back to crushing loneliness, but while I do that, why don't you check out one of these?